Tom Countryman is chairman of the Arms Control Association and a former senior State Department official who was pushed out by Trump while en route to a meeting on nuclear weapons overseas. Little context there about Tom. Paul Callan is a CNN legal analyst, and Kel McClanahan is executive director of National Security Counselor. So, gentlemen, welcome to all of you. And just Paul, first, just on this news from these chairmen of these various House committees, I mean, how extraordinary is it that the White House, State Department basically tried to tell her, you know, you can't honor a congressional request?
It's extraordinary on so many levels. First, you never hear of the State Department, on orders of the president, blocking somebody from the State Department coming in to testify about a matter of foreign affairs. That's highly, highly unusual.
Yeah.
But the second thing, to order her and to try to get her to ultimately defy a subpoena really raises it to another level. And I think it's going to set a precedent over the long run, because remember, each thing that happens now while impeachment is being investigated will set a precedent for what comes in the future in terms of bringing more witnesses in to testify. So you now have a precedent that a witness who has been subpoenaed has the right to come in and speak to Congress, unless, of course, some court rules otherwise.
And again, just a quick follow-up, because Yovanovitch, as we pointed out, you know, been this public servant for 30 years, had been appointed by Republican and Democratic presidents, and she is on the State Department payroll still. So should she be worried about her job?
I think she'll be okay, because as a career diplomat, she has certain due process rights, and they would have to show that she acted in bad faith. And certainly honoring a congressional subpoena, and congressional subpoenas have been upheld by the courts throughout history, would seem to be a good faith act. Okay. So I think it'll be hard to fire her.
Okay, Tom Countryman, boy, oh boy, I would love to hear from you here, because I can't imagine how, you know, your former colleagues over at the State Department are feeling today, because you have Yovanovitch's deposition. And on top of that, the other piece of news is that this top advisor to Secretary Pompeo quit because apparently he didn't feel that Pompeo expressed enough public support for Yovanovitch and others who've been caught up in the Ukraine investigations. I mean, you tell me what you can share, you know, from any conversations you may be having from folks over at the State Department. What might they be saying or feeling today?
Well, thanks, Brooke. A couple of points I'd emphasize. First of all, Masha Yovanovitch is among the most gifted and honorable of American diplomats. Whatever she's saying today is not motivated by anger or at her mistreatment or by partisanship, but by a desire for truth. And I would love everyone to read the statement she submitted, not just for the facts of the case, but because it contains an inspiring statement about the love of country that motivates America's public servants. Second, those officials like my friend Mike McKinley, who has just left, those who have left the State Department are patriotic Americans. And those Foreign Service and Civil Service officers who remain and are doing their best in difficult times are also patriotic Americans. They did not swear an oath to the president or to his bank account, but to the Constitution, and every day they work for America's national security. And just one quick point. When Congressman Pompeo zealously pursued an investigation into the tragedy at Benghazi, it never occurred to Secretary Clinton or to anyone in the State Department that they could simply refuse to cooperate with a legitimate congressional investigation. But that is the blatantly unconstitutional position that the White House takes and that Secretary Pompeo seems to defend.
Point made. Point made. Kel, to you, just reminding everyone also, you know, Yovanovitch was brought up in that July 25th phone call between President Trump and his Ukrainian counterpart. We know that Yovanovitch was ousted at a time that, you know, number one, she says she had just been asked to extend her tour, and two, you have this newly elected Ukraine president, so you would think that they would want continuity of tenure, right, of keeping an ambassador in that same post. But the Trump White House apparently did not. So why would they want her out?
Well, you can think of a few obvious reasons. I mean, even in her testimony, she talked about, her written testimony, she talked about how there was this campaign that people on the outside can link back to Rudy Giuliani to whisper in the president's ear that she was basically undermining the interest that Giuliani and maybe the president had in the region because of her anti-corruption efforts. And this sort of shadow diplomacy that she was in the middle of, that she was caught in, where she was trying to be the official voice of the United States government in Ukraine, as is her job, and assist them in their anti-corruption efforts and foster anti-corruption efforts. And ever since September 2018, there was this campaign, as she described, that the Deputy Secretary of State had told her about, to get her removed, based on these allegations that she was somehow disloyal.
She does mention that in her opening statement. And Tom, back over to you, as you are urging everyone to read it. You know, I read every word, and I wanted to highlight this one graph toward the end. She had said this morning, "Today we see the State Department attacked and hollowed out from within. State Department leadership with Congress needs to take action now to defend this great institution." And she says, "I fear that not doing so will harm our nation's interest, perhaps irreparably." And Tom, what would that harm look like long term?
Well, it is definitely long-term harm that has already been inflicted. It is not irrecoverable. A serious leadership at the State Department can restore the credibility of America's diplomacy overseas. But the situation we have now is that those individuals who have devoted a career to this, who understand foreign policy, are not seen by foreign leaders as reliably speaking for the United States government. Rather, this White House seems to be embracing the kind of diplomacy with which countries that are corrupt, that are authoritarian, are more comfortable with, such as Turkey or Hungary or Russia. And so what we are seeing is the inability of the United States to speak credibly in favor of democracy, in favor of human rights, and against corruption. That can be fixed, but the damage done in the last 2.5 years is substantial.
I'm going to let those words just hang. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you, Paul Callan. Don't go too far. We're going to chat on something else coming up. We're also following. Gentlemen, thank you.